The majority of pure elements exist either as gas or solid at room temperature, few falling into the rare state of matter associated with water, liquid. In fact, only 2 elements are liquid at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, the beautiful and shiny yet deadly mercury and bromine. Element number 35. Bromine is a deep brown-red liquid. It evaporates aggressively, forming vapor of a similar shade. It is also noxious to the nose. In fact, the word bromine comes from the Greek word bromos, meaning stench. Despite such unpleasant physical properties, the bromine industry formed a cartel in the late 19th century. This is not just the story of the rise and fall of the bromine cartel. It's not just the story of dramatic price wars with climactic endings, but this is also a tale of how past and current beliefs in American exceptionalism impact the way Americans view their own history into the modern day. This is the American Bromine Myth. Before 1892, bromine was produced commercially by using heat to evaporate brine pumped from underground. The bromine was produced by a dozen small firms, all located in Ohio and Kanawha rivers, in West Virginia and Ohio. Nearly all the liquid bromine produced was sold to one of few large pharmaceutical distributors, who then converted the volatile liquid bromine into potassium bromide salts. During the Civil War, potassium bromide was discovered to have sedative properties and became offered commercially to cure headaches and nervous disorders. In 1885, a pool known as the National Bromine Company, or NBC, was formed. NBC had contracts with all the liquid bromine producers to buy the entirety of their bromine at a certain price, and prohibited the producers from selling liquid bromine to anyone else. The pool had contracts to then sell all of the liquid bromine they bought and sell it to the 2 largest pharmaceutical distributors in the country, Power & Waitman, or P&W, and Mallinckrodt Chemical Company. The formation of the bromine pool removed competition in the bromine industry. However, the price of the consumer product, potassium bromide, barely changed after the NBC was formed in 1885. The pool buying and selling the entirety of the liquid bromine production from the Ohio River producers had 2 notable effects. It provided stability for the Ohio River producers through guaranteed sales, and it meant P&W and Mallinckrodt built up excess stores of liquid bromine in order to ensure participation in the pool. If any of the producers sold bromine to someone outside the pool, the distributors threatened to flood the bromine market with the excess stores, which would vastly lower the price of liquid bromine, damaging the Ohio River producers. The only other real threat to P&W and Mallinckrodt's domination of the potassium bromide market was the Brom Convention. Brom Convention, who were a German bromide cartel, an association of German bromide producers that worked together to keep prices artificially high and remove competition at all costs. P&W and Mallinckrodt had an informal pact with the Brom Convention to stay out of each other's business. America would not export bromide to the Brom Convention's territory of Europe, and the Brom Convention would stay out of the United States. The NBC expired in 1891. Without a pool, the bromide industry engaged in competitive price wars, which resulted in the price of potassium bromide dropping off a cliff, going from 33 cents a pound down to a low of 20 cents per pound. In 1892, a bromine pool was reformed by W.R. Shields, who both owned a bromine and salt plant and had good relationships with the distributors. The new Shields pool had very similar contracts, and the price of potassium bromide rose back up to higher than they started, staying in the 40-cent range until the 1900s. The price of war was not even the most important development for the bromine industry in 1892. Herbert Dow and his firm, Midland Chemical Company, which would later become one of the largest chemical companies up to the modern day, Dow Chemical Company, developed a new and more efficient process for extracting bromine. He used electrolysis instead of thermal evaporation. Electrolysis, or using electricity to isolate bromine from brine, was also safer in addition to being cheaper than thermal evaporation. Instead of producing dangerous and volatile liquid bromine that would be shipped to manufacturers, electrolysis could produce potassium bromide directly, so the risky transitory stage was skipped. Therefore, using this method, Dow could bypass the manufacturers and disturb the collusion. However, Dow lacked a national distribution network, so in 1904, Herbert Dow signed a contract to sell his bromines only to PNW and Mallinckrodt. This bypassed yields, but Dow was still a part of the collusion. Dow had to work within the restraints of the pool from 1894 to 1902, selling his bromine at fixed prices under his contracts. Dow and his company wanted to work alone, however, so in 1902, Dow decided not to renew his contracts. Instead, Dow signed contracts with chemical companies that Mallinckrodt and PNW normally competed against, Rosengarten Sons and George and Merck Co. These contracts did not set prices for the bromine and were not exclusive. Unlike before, Dow could sell his bromide to wherever or whoever he wanted. Leaving the Shields pool was a dangerous maneuver. In 1902, Herbert Dow wrote a letter to the president of the Dow Chemical Company. If we worked independently of Mr. Shields, Power and Waitman and Mallinckrodt Chemical Works might put on the market something like 2 years' supply that they have already accumulated, Dow said. Dow's concerns were correct. Mallinckrodt and PNW retaliated, undercutting Dow, who then undercut them in return, and so on. In other words, a price war. This price war in 1902 was brief, but the price of bromide dropped by 45%. 2 months after beginning, the 1902 price war ended, with Mallinckrodt, PNW, and Dow agreeing not to undercut each other. With Dow freed from the pool, Dow started his own distribution system, vertically integrating. However, Dow wanted to grow more, and he looked overseas. The American bromide industry, as mentioned before, had an informal agreement with the Brom Convention not to export bromide. In 1903, Dow ignored this and started secretly exporting bromide to England. In 1905, the Germans had learned about Dow's exploitations, and they were furious. They seek to retaliate for Dow being an unreliable partner by flooding the market, which would devalue the American bromide so much that Dow would go bankrupt. In theory, at least. The Brom Convention offered bromine at 15 cents per pound in New York City, well under half of the market price. A representative from the Brom Convention, Herr Johnson, explicitly told Dow that they had done this in retaliation. Dow played dumb, pretending not to know about the non-export clause, as it was in an informal pact which was never formally or legally documented. Dow, Merck, and Mallinckrodt, 3 of the major American chemical companies, called the Germans bluff initially. They figured that because of the costs of shipping, production, and tariffs, the Brom Convention were running at such a loss by selling the bromide at 15 cents that they would only be willing to sell a few hundred pounds of it, which was, in truth, a correct call. The Brom Convention was bluffing, and it was not truly strong enough in a position to withstand selling large amounts of bromide at 15 cents. Therefore, Dow, Merck, and Mallinckrodt did not panic and undercut 15 cents. They held out strong, at least initially. You see, there was not 3 major American chemical companies, there were 4. And Rosengarten, who had recently bought PNW, panicked and dumped 13 years of PNW's potassium bromide accumulation onto the market. With large amounts of bromide now at low prices, the other companies were forced to get involved and engage in a price war, both with other American companies and with the Brom Convention. The price war caused many chemical manufacturers to pull out of the bromine market, yet Dow stayed in the ring with the Germans. Both sides thought the other was about to give up. The previous price war had lasted 2 months. The price war that started in 1905 dragged on for 3 long years. 3 years of selling a product for barely more, potentially less than the cost to produce. 3 years of cheap bromide patent medicine to the consumer. 3 years of unsustainable prices. Eventually, Dow started buying up the cheap German bromide sold in America at 12 cents, and then turned around and sold it on the European market at 27 cents. However, this was only done for a small amount of bromide. Dow did in fact profit and damage the Germans by undercutting the cartel-inflated 49 cents per pound bromine the Brom Convention sold in Europe, but the large majority of the bromine Dow sold in Europe was his own, not scalped. The price war finally ended in November of 1908. Dow and the Brom Convention engaged in extensive negotiations held in London. The resulting compromise was that Dow would withdraw from Europe and Germans would withdraw from the US. This was offered many times before. However, this time, Dow would get 1/3 of the bromide sales for the rest of the world, and Dow and Germans would jointly set the prices worldwide, not Germany having control like before. This arrangement was successful for both parties and caused bromide prices to raise back up to and stabilize around 40 cents, at least until World War I. Very few history textbooks, newspapers, etc. talk about the bromine cartel, which makes sense. This is just some story about a few slightly dramatic events in the industry of a somewhat niche chemical. The tale of the bromine price war was seldom talked about in its own time. So how would someone in modern day learn about the story of the bromine cartel? 75% of Gen Z watches YouTube daily, and the top result on YouTube relating to the bromine cartel is a short video with over 1 million views titled "Herbert Dow, the man who destroyed a cartel and built a $4 billion fortune." The video portrays Dow as bankrupting the evil German bromine cartel when he started to sell bromide to Europe, and then Dow brilliantly bought the Germans' own retaliatory, underpriced bromide and resold it. A 2018 presentation from an engineering society shares the same dramatic story, with bromide buybacks as the main focus. A Reddit post with 11,000 upvotes tells the same tale, and cites the Wikipedia article for Herbert Dow. The section on Herbert Dow's Wikipedia article that the Reddit post was about, titled "Breaking the Monopoly," again portrays Dow heroically, quote, outsmarting the confuddled Germans, quote. The Wikipedia article uses nearly identical wording to its source for the section, an article from May the 1st, 1997, from Michigan's free market think tank called the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, and is written by Dr. Burton Folsom. The anecdote of Dow buying and reselling German bromine is misrepresented in all these articles. In the media before the Mackinac Center article, the bromine buyback is correctly represented, such as Liebenstein's 3 papers on the bromine cartel in 1983 and the book The Dow Story from 1968. Dow bought a small amount of German bromide and resold it only after being very successful selling 27-cent bromide in Europe that he made himself. However, in the Mackinac Center article and almost all the media that came out after May 1st, 1997, Dow is portrayed as primarily combating an evil German cartel by reselling their bromine. The Mackinac Center article caused a misnomer to spread into the public conception of American history. It became the source for a Wikipedia article and was allowed to spread beyond. The misportrayal of the historical story by Dr. Folsom came out of the conception of American exceptionalism. This article paints the bromine price war as a glorious tale, literally comparing it to Goliath versus David. Dr. Folsom described Dow as being daring and having the spirit of American freedom when he undercuts the German cartel. But when Brom Convention undercuts Dow, they are, quote, going on a rampage. Both Dow and the Brom Convention used aggressive business tactics and participated in collusion, but the article makes Dow the hero and the Germans inherently villainous. Folsom describes Dow as helping liberate the American chemical industry from its European stranglehold. Quote, the Brom Convention did not interfere with American chemical trade, only prevented them from expanding into Europe. This wording implies that it is America's right to expand and form international commercial empire, that America has exceptional right to dominance. Beliefs in American exceptionalism like this impacts the modern section of historical events and has far-reaching impacts on the way Americans view the world. This American bromine myth is a demonstration in American exceptionalism.